Fueling athletes. So athletes are humans just like anyone else. So uh, much of this is pretty much the same as with a regular person, but we're going to look at some specific things for athletes. So the six main classes of nutrients is just the same as for anyone else, but we're going to look at why each of these classes of nutrients are so important for athletes. So carbohydrates themselves are a type of sugar that provides energy to our muscles, typically in the form of glycogen. And the fiber in carbohydrates also help control fat and cholesterol. So something that's new would be glycemic index. If you haven't heard of this before, glycemic index has to do with how long a food takes to break down in your bloodstream. So for example, we have things with low glycemic index. If you look down here at this bottom group, these are low glycemic index foods like apples, apricots, and these take a longer time to break down and take longer to enter the bloodstream, and so they enter the bloodstream at a very slow rate. And so this is beneficial prior to games and just day to day. These are really good. Things that have a high glycemic index means that these break down very quickly and enter our bloodstream very quickly. And so these would be really great for like during practice or during strenuous activities. So good things, let's say someone that was running a marathon and took some food to eat along the way. These would be good for that because it's nutrients that you can get to very quickly. And things like angel food cake, white bagel, more simple foods break down quickly, and that energy gets into the bloodstream very quickly, which is good while exercising. Now, if we're thinking about somebody like a diabetic, we absolutely wouldn't want that, and they would look at glycemic index from a little bit of a different perspective, but we're looking at it for athletes. So protein is really helpful because it helps develop tissue, maintain the tissue that you have. It helps with red blood cells, hair, antibodies, enzymes, hormones, and even helps control water levels. And so how much protein should an athlete eat? This is a common question athletes ask. How much protein is appropriate? And right down here is a really great little chart of what you're looking for. So it really depends what type of athlete we're talking about, how much protein they're going to need. So you notice that endurance athletes only need about 2.2 to 2.6 calories of protein per pound of body weight. But if we look at athletes that are trying to do strength training and build those muscles, remember muscles were built with protein, and so they'll need more protein ingestion in order to help build those muscles. So we see they need like 2.9 to 3.1 calories of protein per pound of body weight. So this would be a fairly simple calculation. Let's say you're a marathon runner and you weigh 100 pounds. If you weigh 100 pounds, multiply that by 2.2 and you would get 220 calories of protein per day. Does that make sense? So with fat, this is our primary stored energy source. And so when the body's resting, we use fat to produce our energy. And when we're doing long-term aerobic activity or light activity, we also use fat stores to produce energy. Now, fat is not fat is not fat. There are different types of fat. There's saturated fat, unsaturated fat, and trans fat. And so saturated fat is fat that we tend to see from animals, and some people believe that it contributes to cardiovascular disease and possibly even cancer. Now that's a little debated, okay? So this, as research is progressing, the book did show the cardiovascular disease and cancer, but as research is progressing, we really aren't positive when it comes to unsaturated and saturated fat, how bad each one of these are for you. We know that unsaturated fat that tends to come from plants is generally healthier. So the best fat for you to consume is unsaturated fat. Then saturated fat is very debated right now. It's a hot topic. And so other than reading research, I can't really say, oh, it's good, it's bad, because the research just keeps conflicting itself. Now the third fat, trans fat, we know is not good for you. Trans fat is when we take unsaturated fats and we hydrogenate them or add hydrogens to it to make it form a solid. And this we know leads to heart disease and diabetes. And in some countries, they're even trying to ban trans fats. So we know that we want to avoid trans fats and that unsaturated fats are the best fats for us. Okay? So when it comes to vitamins, these vitamins are really important because they help with our metabolic reactions. So all the reactions happening within our body. And so it depends on the vitamin, what it does for you. But vitamin A is specifically helpful for your eyes. Vitamin A and C are really good for our immune system. Vitamin B's help with energy and the nervous system. Vitamin D helps our body actually absorb calcium and phosphorus. Now, calcium and phosphorus aren't vitamins, but vitamin D helps us to get some of our minerals like calcium and phosphorus, which brings us to minerals, and these help our body regulate different processes. Again, it depends on the specific mineral. Some common minerals that we see frequently are calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, which all help with bone strength. Fluoride strengthens teeth. Iron is really helpful for our oxygen transport. It's actually what the oxygen binds to. Sodium and potassium help maintain our blood volume. They work specifically in the kidneys to help maintain how much fluid our kidneys retain and gets rid of. Zinc helps derive energy for our fuel, and iodine helps us with our energy usage. Now down here, this antioxidants, these are not a vitamin, they're not a mineral, they're not one of the 6 main nutrients, but antioxidants is something that we find in some of our fruits and vegetables. We tend to see them in our dark red and our deep blue vegetables, and these are really beneficial to our body because they help the cells, help protect the cells. So when we produce energy, which we do all the time, every day, we produce that ATP. One of the byproducts we get is called a free radical. And a free radical are these extra electrons that are floating around, which are a negative thing because they actually can cause damage to our DNA and lead to things like cancer. And so antioxidants come in and they grab those and they prevent it from damaging the DNA. So antioxidants, foods high in antioxidants, things like pomegranates, cherries, are really great items for our health. Now, vitamins and minerals we can get from our food, and that is ideally the best place to get them. Now, that may be difficult for some people, and so some people decide to use supplements. So here are some lists of common supplements that people decide to use. Feel free to look through these. It goes through kind of a lot of details and kind of helps you sort out some of the research behind them. So for example, magnesium, the claim of magnesium supplements is to increase muscle mass and power using ATP or phosphocreatine energy systems. However, evidence refutes the claim. So that means that scientific evidence proves that magnesium doesn't really do that. Is it banned in most places? No. Are there health risks for taking it? No. It's safe, but it doesn't really seem to do what it says it does. And so this is helpful for you, especially if athletes are coming to you asking you, oh, should I take this? Should I take that? Because athletes want to be good a lot of times. That's not usually the biggest problem we have, athletes wanting to be good, but they're trying to pick your brain for knowledge. So this is a good resource for you. Some specific supplements would be creatine. Creatine's one that we see a lot and people talk a lot about. And the idea is it's an energy source. Remember creatine phosphate energy system? Well, creatine is a way, creatine supplements are a way to help us load those creatine stores. And interestingly, our research shows that it is effective. Right? So it is effective for people doing high intensity exercise, and it does help people improve their lean body mass. And so creatine supplement is fairly safe as long as it's done correctly. And so most people have probably heard of how to use creatine. It's fairly simple as far as there's a beginning loading phase where a person takes quite a bit of creatine and then they use smaller amounts of creatine after that. And this just helps the body maintain creatine stores and refill those creatine stores faster than it naturally would. So we do know that it is helpful for high intensity exercise. However, interestingly, it hasn't been shown to actually improve performance. So some people think creatine might help them to run faster or catch more footballs or whatever it may be, but performance-based, it hasn't been shown, but it does help people to exercise at higher levels. Another common nutrient that we see is caffeine. You might not think of this as performance-enhancing drug, but it has been shown to improve endurance athletes by about 25%, which is actually fairly significant. And so caffeine is something that many endurance athletes are starting to use. It helps replace glycogen stores after a workout by almost 60%. So caffeine has been shown to be effective. However, one of the misconceptions with caffeine would be that it boosts our resting metabolic rate. And so that's the rate that we're burning right now. I'm just resting, sitting here talking to you, and even though I'm resting, I'm burning calories. Now, caffeine isn't going to boost that calorie burn, but it can boost endurance performance and even recovery post-workout. And so person to person, caffeine affects them differently. And interestingly, the International Olympic Committee used to have a ban on high amounts of caffeine, but as of 2004, they got rid of that ban. So caffeine is more commonly being used. Another controversial supplement would be energy drinks. And honestly, right now, the debate is still out. So some people believe it's safe. Some people do not believe they're safe. And so the research is just too contradicting right now for me to sit here and tell you that yes, this or no, that. But we do know that some things like taurine is not good for us. If that's in your energy drink, that's not good. So the last one is water, and water is really important because it helps us with temperature control, it helps move waste throughout our body, and it makes up almost 60 to 70% of our body weight. So we want to make sure our athletes stay hydrated. So you can educate your athletes and you can monitor their weight, especially if you have day-to-day practice. When they show up to practice, weigh them, and then when they leave practice, weigh them again, because during that hour or 2 hours, they're not going to lose bone, fat, and muscle weight. They're going to lose water weight. And so for every pound of weight an athlete loses, we want them to drink 2 cups of fluid to make that up. And then the next time they come back, if they haven't gained that weight, that's a problem because they're probably starting at a dehydrated point. And so we want to make sure they're hydrated so that their body can function properly. And so this just walks you through different types of drinks and weighing athletes and why it's important. So specifically for us, hot environments, can be a specific problem and a danger. And so this chart walks you through the humidity and the temperature and whether it's dangerous to potentially have practice. And so one thing that's really important is for your athletes to know the signs and symptoms of heat exhaustion and heat stroke. And so things like being faint and dizzy or having excessive sweating, having cool, pale, and clammy skin. These are all signs of heat exhaustion, and you want your athletes to tell you so they can rest and it doesn't lead to things like a heat stroke where body temperatures rise above 103 degrees and a person can actually lose consciousness. It's similar to a regular stroke, and this can be life-threatening. So we want our athletes to tell us and to give them a break if they start to see these signs.